Welcome back, Heat Seekers. It's happened. As of November 1st, the King was put on IR. Running backs in fantasy football have been a mess this year. We've had 27 of them go on IR, 14 major fantasy players. We're here to help tonight. We're going to talk about all the madness at running back and try to help get you some rest of season type plays for your redraft or even in your dynasty league if you're competing. As always, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Smash that like if you enjoy the content we're doing. With that being said, my friend Cody, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. Recovering after my Cincinnati Bengals just completely pooped their pants. I'm really not happy with that lowering the helmet call. That was a little ridiculous, but I'm also of the belief that one call doesn't change the game. So it is what it is, but, I'm recovering. How about yourself, Bryce?
I am doing well. Unlike you, my team finally beat a good team. So it's good to see the Patriots compete and win a game that they, against a pretty decent opponent. So, but other than that, I'm always good. Thanks for asking. Brad, how are you?
My team is used to the refs forgetting that they do play football as well. So I understand that pain. In all my Lions groups that I'm a part of, they put together highlight reels of all the bad calls that refs get against us. So welcome to the club. It is a terrible place to be. Myself personally, I'm fine though. The world has treated me well. I've managed to dodge most of these running back injuries, except for I think Kareem Hunt and David Montgomery, because those are the two in the offseason that I was targeting to pick as many shares up as I could because they seem to be cheaper of these high-end running backs. Welcome to the chat, all the folks that are out there, Tony and Slim and all you guys. If you guys and gals, if you guys have questions, throw them in. As always, we will help you out and get your questions answered. Discord is a great place to go as well. We can help you out in a little bit more of a deeper context than just in the chats here. With that being said, so like I said, there are 14 major fantasy running backs on IR. I'll give you a quick recap for those that have forgotten. Chris Carson, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Travis Etienne, Darrington Evans, not really major, but I'm putting him in there because he would have been major right now. Derrick Henry. We'll throw Kylan Hill in for the fun of it. He's a Green Bay running back who they had high hopes for this year. Kareem Hunt, CMC, who's potentially coming back, but for who knows how long, he keeps getting hurt and going back to IR. David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert, not surprised there. It happens every year. Miles Sanders, James White. There are 13 other running backs on IR, but they are not nearly as major players in the fantasy space. So with Henry down, obviously everybody's scrambling. So we'll start at the top there. There's AP. We've got Dante Foreman. We've got Jeremy McNichols. We've got, whomever they might show up. Obviously Todd Gurley's not been mentioned, but, Todd Gurley could get an appearance in some team here coming up, although it seems doubtful at this point. Who are you guys, and I'll start with you, Bryce, who do you think makes sense for what Tennessee's trying to do? So they've had troubles keeping their wide receivers on the field due to injuries, so they need to find a running back that can help kind of fill in the role, but you're not going to fill him in. Yeah. What are you doing?
I felt confident when I was saying Adrian Peterson, but before the show, Cody kind of made me a little discouraged by giving me the Dante Foreman, and I'll let him talk about that more. But, like you just mentioned, filling Derrick Henry's role is literally impossible. He is a generational talent at his size and speed, and there's no running back that's going to be able to carry the ball as many times as him and stay healthy and do what he does. So the answer is nobody. But I guess I'm hoping it's Adrian Peterson in the sense of he getting maybe like 12 to 15 touches. And if he kind of gets rolling, because he's really never looked bad, even in his older days. He's not looked like his prime, of course, but he's been serviceable.
36, you can only expect so much, right?
Yeah, right. But I mean, like
Frank Gore.
Frank Gore was the same way in the sense of like, I mean, he played for the Jets, but even when he was older, like on the Colts and stuff, he looked okay. He was able to do like a backup's job when the starter got hurt. And I can just kind of hope that maybe Adrian Peterson can somewhat fill that role. I think McNichols is going to get a lot more action. He's been more involved in their pass game. And I think without Derrick Henry, the Titans are going to have to throw a lot more, not being able to maybe ground and pound and tire out defenses as much. So I think they're going to kind of sprinkle in Adrian Peterson and McNichols to try and fill that Henry
role. Funniest thing, though, to that point, McNichols has been heavily involved in the passing game. Ryan Tannehill's the second leading rusher on this team at 23 attempts, which is so crazy to think about. McNichols, their other running backs, only had 7. Now, 7 for 38 is not shabby. I mean, 5.4. Cody,
Right.
I know you want to talk to Dante Foreman a little bit, but what do you think about this backfield? Is Ryan Tannehill going to stay the second leading rusher?
They're going to have to throw the ball. Everything Bryce said is exactly right. They're going to have to change up their offense a little bit. They're going to have to throw the ball more. No one can replace Derrick Henry. No one can do what he does. Not even a combination of all of their running backs, third down back, McNichols, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to equal what Derrick Henry can and does do. So you're not going to replace him. Obviously, Adrian Peterson is, the sexy name. He's the name everybody knows. It was no surprise that this happened, but yeah, and realistically, I'm more in the camp of if you missed out on, a guy like McNichols or Adrian Peterson or some of those other, more notable names that were free agent acquisitions this week. I think Dante Foreman is still available in most leagues, and he's a guy that knows this team. The team knows him. He played for this team last year, 22 carries. 95 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, last year in about 5 or 6 games, something like that. Caught one ball for a 5-yard touchdown. So that's cool, I guess. But realistically, as far as like pounding the rock, I think Foreman is that guy on this team. I think goal line back, I think that's Foreman. I think at this point in Adrian Peterson's career, and don't get me wrong, Adrian Peterson is one of the greatest running backs to ever put on shoes. And that's a fact. But in a first and goal on the 1 yard line, I'm giving it to Foreman 3 times before I give it to, Adrian Peterson 3 times. That's for sure. The dude is, I'm not going to say he's the same size and speed or anything like that of Derrick Henry, because he's absolutely not, but he's a big bruising back. Kid's only 25 years old. He's almost 12 years younger than Adrian Peterson. He's been on their practice squad. He's a former 2,000-yard rusher, University of Texas, 3rd-round draft pick. He ripped his ACL in his rookie year after having a reasonable rookie start. And then, that's all it takes. And we all know that for running backs, especially in only a 4-year rookie contract where they can just give up on you after, 2 years or whatever it is, 3 years as far as money wise. But with the injury, you get what I'm getting at here. So, I like Dante Foreman. I really do. I think he's a guy worth looking at. Again, he's not a guy that's going to go in there and, be anything close to Derrick Henry. And at the end of the day, Jeremy McNichols is the guy to own. He's absolutely the guy to own. Head and shoulders above Adrian Peterson, head, shoulders, and torso above Dante Foreman. So that's my 2 cents on the Tennessee backfield there.
And I want to throw in a couple more names just to make everybody else go bonkers trying to figure out what to do. They have 2 other running backs on the roster. One I think is kind of a pseudo fullback. He doesn't really get involved in the running game other than blocking from what I've seen, and that's Carrie Blaston game. He's been with the team for a couple of years now. But then there's a sneaky name who did a little bit with Cleveland. Dontrell Hilliard is still on this roster from what I understand. And he's been with the team all season from what I've noticed. He made a little noise with Cleveland when injuries came up in the last few years. Those are also guys that could be involved. I mean, Blasting game's like 6 foot, 233. So, I mean, he's a physical dude. Looks like more of a fullback type, but depending on if AP doesn't really, because remember, he's not played football this year. So yes, it's AP. He'll know how to play and he'll know all that stuff, but he's got to get into game shape. Hasn't been hit in almost a year now. There's going to just take a little time. So if you need somebody else, there's plenty of other options to try out here. So I would say McNichols is the safest option, but he's probably already rostered at this point in most formats, I would think, because he's been involved and he looks solid. Last year with this team, when he had he didn't have a lot of rushing attempts last year. He's a 47 for 204 and a touchdown. That's 4.3 yards to carry. Not terrible. He probably is the safest option to go with at this point because you know what you're going to get. He can do stuff in the passing game and get you some PPR action. And based on his history, he can at least do a little bit in the running game, average over 4 yards a carry. Probably the safest option. Doesn't really excite me, though. In my mind, it's okay, if you lost Derrick Henry, maybe you try to make a trade if you're a team that's winning. If you're a team that's in playoff aspirations, go get somebody because I don't know that any of these options are really going to give you that same, even close to the same production. I think this passing game in Tennessee is going to erupt. I think they're going to lean more on the pass because they're going to have to. That's my gut tells me that. But that scares me because Tannehill leaning on the pass. I mean, that, think of shades of Miami where they had no running game.
Yeah, with this
Didn't go
team
well.
specific, like we talked about when James White went down for the Patriots, you can look at guys like the tight ends. Jeff Swaim had a pretty good game last when Derrick Henry was kind of banged up. He wasn't out, obviously, but he was kind of banged up in that game. Anthony Ferkser's still there. I do expect A.J. Brown to, keep doing what has been doing the last couple of weeks. But that might be another solution there where it's short, drags, that sort of thing to tight ends that are sort of an extension of the running game. But yeah, Jeremy Pickles is going to be the starter. He's going to be the starter. He's going to run the most. He's going to catch the most. He's going to do the most. But again, like you said, I wouldn't even expect half of what Derrick Henry did from any of these guys or all of them put together, to be honest. So yeah, there could be some other options that are just as good, in free agency, whether they're available or not, I don't know. And then we can talk about some trade targets in a minute here.
Yeah, for sure. And why don't we go to that? So Bryce, I'm going to throw the hypothetical at you. If you own Derrick Henry and you need to go find somebody, let's talk hypotheticals here and have a little fun. What would you try to do? Because now you're really hurting and you need something.
So you're probably, especially in redraft formats, I'm going to take probably my best player, which obviously was Derrick Henry. So my next best player, hopefully it's a wide receiver, and you can get a 2-for-1 deal. Right. And I wrote some names down of guys that, especially if you're in the playoff hunt and you are able to squeak your way in there. One guy I really like this year, and he doesn't really have much value when it comes to his name, but he's been very consistent this entire year. And he's got cake matchups when it comes to fantasy playoff time. And that's Darrell Henderson Jr. They play some of the worst defenses. I don't think any of the defenses they play the last 5 weeks of the fantasy season are even top 10. And like I said, he's been putting up great points this year. It might be hard at this point in the season to grab him off of a person's team because he's probably on the roster of a winning team because he went so late as like a flex play, maybe even a bench player in some drafts, depending on the format. But maybe if I was able to take like a guy, like a top level wide receiver, whether it's like a Lamb, a Jefferson, any of the any guys with name values similar to that, and grab like Henderson and like a middle of the pack wide receiver that's been, pretty decent this year. There's a ton of those guys, and whether it's like Robert Woods, I guess I probably wouldn't pair him with another Ram player, but just someone that putting up similar numbers to guys like, Robert Woods, maybe even Tyler Lockett, who's starting to get things back on track as well. That's probably what I'd do as a 1-for-2 deal if I lost a big piece like Derrick Henry. Cody, what would you do?
Yeah, I'm scouring the waiver wire a little bit. I think there's a couple names out there that might be able to help you out if they are available. I think Dante Foreman is a guy to look at, right now, especially. Latavius Murray didn't practice today, and that's coming off a bye, so that's a little bit concerning. So that also brings in Tyson Williams. It brings him into play a little bit, but Dante Freeman's had a touchdown the past 2 games. Realistically, it's tough to trust any of those Baltimore Ravens running backs. But if you're in a tough spot, let's say you had, J.K. Dobbins early in the season and Derrick Henry, and now you're sitting there like you're depleted. I think a guy like Devontae Freeman might be able to come in and help you out. He's a cheap option. So again, I'm scouring the waiver wire for guys like that. Jamaica Hasty is another name. Jeff Wilson's a guy I've been saying to pick up and stash for a few weeks now. This is a perfect time for him to shine, or at least give you some value where you can maybe trade him, something like that. Jared Patterson as well. He had 11 carries last week with Antonio Gibson playing and McKissick. So those are deep, basically, desperate options in the free agency or waiver wire that might still be available along with Dante Foreman. But yeah, like you said, looking for a guy that you can replace Henry with potentially. And we talked about this a little bit pre-show. I really want to bring him up is Josh Jacobs. I think this is the week that I honestly think that this is your last chance to get Josh Jacobs at somewhat of a discount. His next 3 opponents: New York Giants, 25th against running backs, Kansas City Chiefs, 20th against running backs, and then my Cincinnati Bengals, 27th against running backs. So this, I think, is the week to get him. He should be fully healthy coming out of the bye. Obviously, there's been a lot of turmoil with that entire organization right now. And things you can do when that sort of stuff happens is, lean on the running game, hand it off to your 23-year-old Bama running back who's very, very good and very underrated. So he's a guy that you could still get at a reasonable price, I think. So that's my my target if you're looking to kind of replace Henry.
Yeah, I don't have Henry shares. I traded him last off as soon as this last year went. I got rid of any share I had of him. Not that I listened to Sully, but I was on the same thinking as Sully because Sully started mentioning it in the offseason to get rid of him, and I absolutely agreed with him 100%. But I will say that I have a lot of Saquon shares, and because I was buying him cheap. And in one league, I'm competing. So there's a dynasty. It's not necessarily a redraft, but I'm treating it as a redraft because I'm ready to win. So I want to win. So I'm trying to do that. And in this league, I had Saquon, Darrell Henderson, and those I think were the two major running backs I was leaning on, even though Saquon keeps getting hurt. So I also had Mike Davis, who I traded for in the offseason, who's been producing okay, giving you double-digit points a week, but nothing spectacular. Elijah Mitchell was on my taxi squad, and I have Devin Singletary. So I packaged them. This is the full IDP, so I'm going to give you the whole trade, and the IDP pieces obviously don't matter for most folks right now, but I gave up Mike Davis, Elijah Mitchell, Singletary, and then Quincy Williams and Brian Burns. Brian Burns was a tough one for me to trade, but I have Rousseau and Randy Gregory and other things, but that's for another time. And got Leonard Fournette and Robert Woods. Leonard Fournette is a guy I would target a ton to trade for because he's Tampa Bay's number one running back and getting a ton of action. I know this last week was a rough game. Tampa Bay as a team just looked off, and the Saints beat them. It didn't make any sense to me.
They always have a hard time against the Saints. Always.
They
even before Brady. Even before Brady, always.
They play the Saints in the fantasy football championship.
They do, yeah. So Fournette is a guy I'm targeting to go with. What I'm hoping will be a healthy Saquon. Will also be, Daryl Henderson. But in this league, I start a bunch of wide receivers because I have Deontay Johnson, Jacoby Myers, Debo, Tim Patrick's, Adam Thielen, now Robert Woods. I mean, I start multiple wide receivers anyway. So, but ultimately, Leonard Fournette is a running back I'm targeting a lot because I want what he does to this offense. They've used him in the passing game some. They use him as a runner, and he's clearly their best running back. So that's kind of the one I would target that you can get for cheap. I mean, him and James Conner does pretty well in Arizona. If you need depth, I wouldn't trust him as a weekly guy. He's more of a matchup play for me. And I think those were the two big names, as you guys were talking, that came up where I was like, yeah, I think they'd be the ones I want to target. For those in the chat, I see your questions. We're definitely going to get to them here in a few. So make sure you guys stick around. Although the banner does say that too. I just want to make sure to point that out.
I guess there's a couple of like cheaper options I have in mind too that basically an amalgamation of what you two have said, what Bryce was talking about with the package. Mike Davis, yeah, that's a guy you just named there. He's been double digits almost every week, 6 to 7 weeks. If you take out that one, kind of outlier anomaly week 6 for Mike Davis, he's been pretty quality, a flex spot type of a guy. So that's a guy that you could get on the cheap or in a package sort of a thing. Same with Zack Moss. Zack Moss has been 10 plus points in 5 of 6 games. And I think his next two opponents are the Jets and the Jags for Zack Moss. So that's a guy that I think you could get on the cheap or in a package and kind of plug and play sort of a thing. And the reality is, like, for a lot of teams and a lot of people, even competing teams, that flex spot is worth more than the running back spot right now. So if you can even get deeper at wide receiver, whatever it is, depending on how many guys you start and where they play, if you can flex and that sort of thing. If you only start one running back, then that's, you need to start thinking about getting more points out of your flex than your running back spot, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I would also throw in your boy Javonta Williams and Michael Carter as two guys that I've seen go in trades in leagues, in redrafts right now. I'd target them both. Javonta, we're seeing more touches in the backfield, and Michael Carter he's just been exploding, especially in the PPR side of things.
Yeah, I think Michael Carter might be tough to get right now, to be honest. If I'm a Michael Carter owner, which I am in a lot, but not in a ton of my redraft leagues, yeah, I'm not trading him even in redraft, to be honest with you, with what he just did against, again, yeah, my Bengals, and they're tough against, or they're terrible against
Soft
running
against
backs.
the run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I was trying to
backs.
find which redraft it happened yesterday. One of the redrafts I'm in, Michael Carter was traded, but I can't find it. I can't remember what it was for. And I went, oh, that's a good one.
Either way, it's tough because he just blew up. So it's a little, he might be a little tougher to acquire.
Even the week before, he had 9 receptions this past week, and the week before he had 8. So I mean, just the past 2 weeks, he's averaging 8.5 receptions. So
yeah, 5 of 7 games he's been double-digit points, fantasy points easily. You know, so he's definitely done. I mean, of the rookie running backs outside of Najee, he's been number 2. I mean, honestly, he's probably been the second best fantasy running back of the rookies, and he was probably the 3rd or 4th one you drafted, you know?
Yeah, unless you listen to this channel. I know you liked him a lot, Brad, or my channel, because I absolutely am a huge fan of Michael Carter. So if you listen to our channels, you're probably not trading him. But if you can go out and get him, absolutely. And he would be another kind of a fringe package piece, like we were talking about with Bryce there.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
So it depends on who you're trading with, I guess, and where they get their info from.
Yeah.
Would you target? So the other question I had is, would you target a secondary piece to a team like a Tony Pollard or somebody who's more focused on the PPR side of things? Bryce, are you into trying to get the second piece of a team?
I honestly am not a person that does that very often. I typically like to get the main running back, even if it's on like a worse team. Like, I'm just trying to think of the top running backs that are backups. I mean, I don't really consider Javonta Williams much of a backup, even though I guess he is, but he inevitably is going to slowly start
Gordon
to take
are kind
over.
of 50-50.
Yeah, so I would almost just like consider that like a half. And I mean, the only other one would be Kareem Hunt, right? I mean, he's considered the backup that I would definitely be into buying. But other than that, I'm not really big into gathering like backup running backs. I would more like feel good about selling a big piece. Like, for example, I told you that guys I sold basically Cooper Kupp, and was able to get like a Mike Evans and Alvin Kamara out of it, which I thought I was insane that guy was able to give me that, because his next best running back was like Myles Gaskins, and he just immediately accepted that trade. So I like a 2-for-1, and I don't mind giving like a really big elite for like kind of I consider Kamara elite, but even if it wasn't like a Kamara, like if it was like Joe Mixon and Mike Evans, I'd still probably feel good about it, because Joe Mixon's another guy I have on my list. He's got really good matchups when it comes to later in the season. The Bengals do not play great defenses down the stretch when it comes to like the fantasy. When you're thinking about the fantasy playoffs, maybe those matchups that you really need to win to make it into the playoffs. So I'm more of a 2-for-1, and I like this. Get it the number 1 backs that I think are going to get 15 plus touches every week.
Yeah, I think you can pick up some handcuffs from the waiver wire type of stuff if that's what you want to do. And I think that Tony Pollard is essentially a handcuff. He is the clear-cut backup running back to Zeke, right? Guys like Javonta Williams. Who else was I thinking there? Geez. Zack Moss that I mentioned earlier. Those 2 guys have a fair share of the snaps and the targets and the carries, the touches, opportunities, that kind of stuff. They get that regardless. And Tony Pollard does get a fair amount of touches, don't get me wrong, but not quite as much as those guys. So if I was looking for a handcuff, I'd probably just shop the waiver wire for people. I was saying this too earlier, if you have a guy go on the IR late or Sunday morning, go ahead and pick up a guy like Jeremy McNichols, right? Pick up guys that, if there is an injury, then you have a huge, massive piece and a huge advantage over the rest of your league, because you had just a tiny bit of foresight and an empty roster spot, right? If nothing happens, you drop them, and then nothing happens. You're all good. The guy comes off your IR, not a big deal. But I think that's a great way to get yourself some potential, pieces, even trade pieces or weekly starters, flexes, all kinds of stuff like that. So that's what I do as far as picking up handcuffs and backups.
Yeah, well, and the other ones that we haven't mentioned are a couple of bigger plays. Is Washington's backfield with McKissick and Gibson? Because McKissick right now is neck and neck for fantasy points with Gibson because of the injuries right now. And then Arizona. I mean, you've got Edmonds, you've got James Conner. They're both heavily involved. It's hard to see them both as, I mean, there's not really a handcuff. They're used different ways in the offense, so they have kind of their different role. But then you think about teams with injuries like McCaffrey with Chuba Hubbard and some of these others that is a pure handcuff. Like if McCaffrey's there, he's in, and Hubbard's on the vine. So that's, I think, two pieces that we want to make sure that we differentiate between. The true handcuff looks a little different than just two different guys that are used in the offense differently. And Slim brings up a great point. What about, so we talked about Michael Carter earlier. What about a guy like Ty Johnson? He's getting a fair amount of receptions in this offense. You look at the last 2 weeks, he's had 6 and 7 targets and also gotten, 4 or 5-ish carries a week. If you can't obtain some of these other pieces, do you go after a guy like that who may not be huge boom potential, but last week he got a touchdown? I mean, it was, I think he had, was it 5 catches, 71 yards and a touchdown. The week before, 6 catches, 65. I mean, that's double-digit points in most PPR scoring format, redraft leagues. What do you do there, Bryce? Are you willing to do something like that if you're really hurting at running back and there's just nothing available?
I mean, I don't know if I guess it just depends on what I'd be willing to give up. Ty Johnson's more than likely on the waiver wire. So that's exactly a guy's name that I was thinking of when Cody was mentioning scouring the waiver wire for, backups and guys that are, still involved in the offense. I don't know, when the Jets came into the season, it was supposed to be a 3-headed monster with Coleman, Carter, and Johnson. Carter and Johnson kind of took over. Coleman had a couple of, appearances, but then it just became then Carter and then Johnson as the backup, and because Carter can do it all, he's proved it now, and he can run, he can catch the ball, and then Johnson just gets in there to kind of get him a rest. So yeah, I'll grab Ty Johnson if I'm super thin, but I'm probably not giving up any, especially no starting pieces on my roster for him. If it's a bench player and I'm really hurting at running back, I don't see how it could really hurt you. But that's kind of how I feel about Ty Johnson in that sense, Cody.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm not trading for Ty Johnson, but I'd absolutely pick him up off the waiver wire 100%. Right. He's not available in any of my leagues. My leagues are a little bit deeper. If it's like a 12-team league, certainly a 10-team league, if you're hurting, absolutely. Even a 14-team league, he might be kicking around. I wouldn't trade for Ty Johnson. I'd rather, I'd go bigger. But I would absolutely be picking him up 100%. I would put him above any of those scrub names that I mentioned earlier. But
he's getting about 40% of the team snaps right now compared to Michael Carter's 52%. I mean, so it's not a 50-50 split. I mean, clearly Carter's getting more touches or more action, more snaps.
Yeah, I would put him, again, above all those names that I mentioned earlier, scouring the waiver wire type guys. I'd put him above all of those guys, but I didn't consider him to be, a waiver wire guy. I thought he would be on most teams. But again, right. I wouldn't trade for him, but I would absolutely, if he is available 100%, I would use a roster spot on him for sure.
Just looking to see and just grabbing a random redraft league that I'm in to see if he's available.
I checked and he's in 2, or I'm only in 3 or 2 redrafts and he's on the waiver. They're 12 team, not a very, just a typical ESPN 1 to 12.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
1 to 10, 1 to 12, and he's available in both of them. So
yep, I see that as well.
Yeah, as long as it's PPR, I would absolutely think that he's worth a roster spot for sure, unless you got better options, obviously. Like, that's another thing. Don't force this stuff. Like, if you're sitting there and you're looking good at running back, you don't need to go and waste your fab or whatever, or try to get Adrian Peterson, or even, I would say Jared McNichols would be worth grabbing regardless, but you don't need to go after, Adrian Peterson if you're sitting pretty at the running back spot. There's just no real point, It's a waste of a roster spot, basically.
Yeah, and the other backfield that we have not touched on at all is Kansas City. I mean, obviously CEH is still a few weeks away potentially if they do activate him. I don't know that his window opened. I have to check and see if his IR.
I think it's open.
Is it open? Okay, so he's got to come back quick because they only get 3 weeks once that window opens. Darrell Williams has kind of been the man in the backfield, but it's been a very up and down. I mean, since he's taken over, 3 of his 5 weeks have been double-digit point weeks. 1 boom week against Washington, a good week against New York this last week, a good game against the Eagles, and then okay against the Bills and okay against the Titans. What do you make of this KC backfield? You know, Derek Gore and Williams. You know, Bryce. What are you thinking there?
I'm trying to steer clear of that backfield. I didn't like Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out of the draft going into Kansas City. I didn't think he was anything close to what Kareem Hunt was or would be, and I was right on that. You know, yeah, right. And I even said a couple times, like when he got hurt, I think Daryl Williams will give you 80 to 90% of exactly what Clyde Edwards-Helaire did. I mean, obviously Helaire was the starter for a reason, and we just saw this last week with Gore. You know, as David mentioned here, what's going on? It seems like they're going to start like splitting every series, Gore and then Daryl Williams. And then in obvious passing situations, Daryl Williams comes back in because Gore just seemed like more of a bruising back. So I just don't like getting running backs like that. If I have to, I'm definitely going to lean more towards Daryl Williams because he is used more in the passing game than obviously Derek Gore is, and he still gets opportunities to run the ball. But I'm trying to steer clear if I can, and if I can cash in and go trade, I will. But I'm not holding my breath for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to come back and just fully come back and take over the exact same role he was. I think Daryl Williams stays involved, especially in the passing game. And if anything, Derek Gore might have earned himself some goal line work.
Yeah, I oddly enough, I agree, but I also disagree. I agree in the fact that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not that great of a running back. He's really not. And I don't think there's a drop off between him and Daryl Williams. And as far as fantasy is concerned, I think that remains, true as well. But the reality is the team is playing worse. They're putting up less points and they're not winning ball games without Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They averaged over 30 points per game with him in the lineup. Without, it's like 16 or something like that. So that says a lot about, how important he potentially is to that team. And maybe it's just a psychological thing. Maybe who knows? But these are just facts, right? So I do like him when he comes back right this second. Yeah, Daryl Williams is probably still the guy. I really liked how Gore was running the ball, though. He was a bruising back. It seemed like he gained 10 yards almost every carry he had. He was falling forward, pushing the pile, keeping his feet moving, that kind of stuff. And I think that at the end of the day was what earned him more carries. He was moving the chains, and they have lacked that at the running back position, including with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I don't know. I kind of steer clear as well. I think game script will play a role. It's a little too volatile for me, but I'm probably going with Daryl Williams as well, just off of, potential and what should happen and what will likely happen. But yeah, Gore's a fine option, I guess. But again, you're rolling the dice regardless. But the fact is the team is worse without Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I don't think, it's weird because I don't think it's in spite of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But
yeah, I think that Kelsey has fallen off. I think he's not the same Kelsey. I think their teams are catching on to how they did stuff, right? There was a lot of improvising last year, and teams are really keeping their eye on Tyreek Hill, right?
Yeah.
And I just think, and same thing with Kelsey. I mean, we saw it this last week with the Giants. They showed it 1,000 times where they literally were using both safeties and both corners and double teaming both of those guys, and just nobody was able to win a one-on-one when it came to Hardman, Robinson, Pringle. Anybody else was not able to win a one-on-one. So they have to establish a run game. So you might be right. When Clyde Edwards-Helaire does come back, he could very well be very involved.
Yeah. They absolutely need a real true number two wide receiver, because no one on that team can honestly even seems like they can catch the ball sometimes.
Right.
And then, just two high safeties, put a lid on it. That's all defenses are doing. And it's worked, incredibly well week after week, this whole season, pretty much. It's not rocket appliances. Just put a lid on your defense, and they're not going to go downfield on you. They can't. So what are you going to do? They dump it off to Tyreek Hill 12 times, which they did last game, right? Which is a good, it's a solid plan. There's nothing wrong with that. And then run the ball as much as you can. Hopefully, Travis Kelce kind of figures it out. But yeah, he's getting chipped off the line, stuff like that. It's just, it's not rocket science what these defensive coordinators are doing to the Chiefs. And you get Patrick Mahomes out of the pocket, put a lid on your defense. It's a recipe to beat the Chiefs.
It is. Bill, welcome, my friend. So as we're talking running backs, he has an interesting running back conundrum. He has Harris in his 12-team super flex, but he needs an RB2. He has Gibson, who's on a bye and also dealing with a shin injury, which is, kind of limited. He's got Alexander Madison, Tony Pollard, who obviously right now is a starter. Chris Carson, Ridley, both just dropped. Pick him up or stick with what he has long term. He's currently in first place. Ridley, that's an undetermined amount of time. Like if he's back this year, I'd be surprised. Because he doesn't seem.
I don't
like
think he's coming back this year.
Carson, that's a neck injury. That's a dangerous line. He's kind of walking. If he really does think he's coming back this week, or week
he's
9,
not coming. There were rumors that he's out. He might be out for the year.
Well, he said he wanted to play this week. That's
I don't think he played. I don't think he. But I think both Chris Carson and Ridley are not coming back this year.
That's an injury with Chris Carson that he might not walk again,
right?
If something bad happens on the football field, and it's something that I'm sure he could play with right now. I'm sure he could play right now. Is it prudent? Is it safe? I don't think so. So I'm sure he wants to play. I'm sure he feels like he can play, but. Any doctor is going to say it's I don't know. I don't know about Chris Carson, long term at all. Calvin Ridley, I'd take more of a shot on this year because maybe he comes back. I'm not sure. I honestly think it's more likely that Calvin Ridley comes back and plays. Obviously that's not a health issue with him. A physical health issue with him, but with Chris Carson, it might be very, very dangerous for him to play football, and not just now, but to be honest, moving forward.
I think his career is.
There's potential his career's in danger, in my opinion.
I think, him being a starting running back in most
certainly not a doctor, but
it's not ideal.
No,
from what
I haven't
doctors
even
are
stayed
saying,
at a Holiday Inn, so I don't know.
From what I've heard doctors say, that's not something you should mess around with. I don't think.
This is kind of the perfect situation in my mind that you hit the waiver wire for a guy like a Ty Johnson, like we were talking about. If you can't get a major player, because I'm seeing Madison and Pollard are on your roster, that probably tells me it's pretty slim pickings out on the waiver wire. Ty Johnson would be a perfect play. Pollard, I don't know that it really excites me to have him as my RB2 unless I'm stacked at wide receiver and I'm really strong at all these positions, because he's not. He's getting a fair amount of touches. So look, last week against Minnesota, there wasn't a lot going on there. 7 carries, 26 yards, and he got targeted once and he caught the ball once for 1 yard. Before that, he's getting double-digit carries, weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so 13, 11, 10, 14, 10. Fair amount of rushing attempts. And then targeting in the passing game, 3, 4, 0, 1, 3. Not a lot. I would look for something like a Ty Johnson or one of these other lesser named players, Derek Gore.
I would trade Antonio Gibson while you can. Absolutely. That's what I would do. I was avoiding Antonio Gibson like the plague, and I have been since he came into the league, to be honest with you. I think I see him very much like Miles Sanders. I do. So that's what I would do if I were you. I would trade Antonio Gibson. You could maybe trade Antonio Gibson for Josh Jacobs straight up. Maybe. If not, another small piece or something. And I would really, I hope that's Najee Harris over Damian Harris. I'm assuming it is Najee if you're in first place.
Yeah, it's probably Najee.
He's not first place with Gibson and Damian.
So Najee Harris and Josh Jacobs both done their bye for the rest of the season. I like that. Even if you have to package Gibson and Pollard, something like that to get Jacobs, that's what I would do. Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there you go. All right, so I'm going to jump back up to the top and make sure we get some of these comments at the top. B-Dubs, one of my favorite places to eat. Who would you rather have rest of the season, Knox or Logan Thomas?
Knox for me. Knox for sure.
Knox. I don't know if Logan Thomas.
I love Logan Thomas. I don't know when he's coming back.
Ricky Seals-Jones is playing fine, isn't he?
Yeah, but Logan Thomas is better.
Yeah, and plus, big part of this conversation for me is quarterback play.
Yeah,
is a huge part of that conversation for me. Yeah, you might have to wait another couple
saying
weeks.
Josh Allen's better than Heineke?
Just by a tiny bit. You gotta say, right? A tiny bit, right?
How dare you? Taylor Heineke's on right now. I apologize, my friend. He was lambasted by our friends from the Great White North. I don't hate Knox, but I do love Logan Thomas, and he's in an offense where he is the number 2 wide receiver, basically. It's McLaurin, then Logan Thomas when healthy. So I don't hate either. I think both of them are fine plays. I would probably lean Logan Thomas just because I think there's more opportunity there. But Dawson Knox has been great this year. I mean, the last few weeks before the injury.
Yeah, health-wise, they might be back at the same time. So
It could be.
We'll see something the close, like 1 week before the other, something like that. So
yeah, they're pretty on the same timeline. AB. That's
Antonio?
a fun picture. I about to say that can't be Antonio Brown, although it's funny. I'm in need of an RB2-3. Can I trade Dawson Knox for either? Oh yeah, I mean, if you've got a good tight end, you could easily trade Knox and go target a running back if somebody's in need.
Yeah, you could try it, but with what we talked about at the beginning, it's slim pickings out there.
Yeah.
If I have any running back depth, I know, and I'm somewhat intelligent of what's going on in the league, I'm gonna make someone overpay. So I would if I could, but I think you're gonna have to add more for any running back 2, definitely for any running back 2 value. Running back 3, you'd have to get like bottom of the barrel for a tight end like Knox, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, not too many. I was just going to say that too. Like, you're not going to get proper value, I don't think,
right?
Going after a running back. Like a name that I said earlier, like a Zack Moss teammate, obviously, as well. Like Zack Moss or Dawson Knox, you might be able to pull off, should be able to. But, are you comfortable starting Zack Moss as an RB2? Yeah, I agree. I just don't think too many people are going to make that trade with you. I think you're going to have to find a little more to offer, even like an upgrade somewhere, an upgrade for them, downgrade at wide receiver, something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. Look for a guy like Elijah Mitchell, maybe. And then you can you got to add more still. Like I said, you're going to have to add more or package or, something.
I consider him running back 2 value, like middle to low end. So.
I think he might fall off a little bit if he can't stay healthy.
Is he banged up right now?
I mean, it seems like he's been that way since.
Yeah.
Again, he came into the season hurt. I mean, even Shanahan said that he and Sermon had like the same injury, didn't they? I believe. And they said, he was saying they had like almost the same injury,
but
and Mitchell was progressing better.
The big thing with that is like Jamaica Hasty is another guy. Did I say him? I don't think
he got heavily involved.
Yeah, you said him and Jeff Wilson earlier.
Yeah, so he's a guy too that's going to eat into that Elijah Mitchell role a little bit. Obviously, passing downs for sure. And then when Jeff Wilson comes back, so Elijah Mitchell I think is going to fall off a little bit. I still don't mind him, but I think like I would be looking to trade away Elijah Mitchell right now. If especially after a 100-yard game touchdown, I'd be looking to trade him away. If you can maybe upgrade somewhere or whatever. Like we just said, you can get max value for running backs if you can afford to trade them, obviously. Like this whole episode's about, right? It's tough to find running backs.
And AB, I would encourage you, I dropped the Discord link in the chat, like I've been telling folks on every show, jump in Discord, put your roster up, put a league link out so we can jump in there and take a look at your league, and we can give you some trade ideas. We got a lot of guys in all our different chats that love to give their advice on our team and great people in the community that we have on the channel. So definitely jump in there, throw your league in there, and we can take a look as well and see what we can do to help you find either waiver help or trade partner or both. Miggy 909, welcome. RBs I have Henderson, Harris, Gaskin, Moss, and Henry. Not really any good RBs left on the board. Want to replace Moss and Henry. That's probably Damian Harris looking at this roster.
I'm assuming
Damian. I don't know that you need to though, right? Henderson just slides into your RB1 role. Not the sexiest RB1, but serviceable to just fine this year for RB1. You've got Damian or Gaskin based on matchup as your RB2. I mean, you can, but I wouldn't be clamoring to go look because these guys are fine, right?
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do anything with Henry, at all. So besides drop him. So, I mean, you're not going to be able to replace him, with anything sort of a thing, if that makes sense. So drop Henry. And then, I would just hang on to Zack Moss. He's one of those guys that is, a flex play sort of a thing. I think you actually have some reasonable depth there, unless you're starting like 100% 2 running backs a week. And even then, I think you're still okay. Mind you, bye weeks are going to be a problem for you later in the season before the playoffs and week 14 and 11 and stuff. But
right.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, I agree.
Another one. Jump in Discord and we can help you. We can try to see what we can do there. B-Dubs, back with another question. I have Darrell Henderson, CEH, Javonta, Mitchell, Daryl Williams, C. Patterson. Should I try to grab Saquon from the last place team?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, Saquon's ankle is, I mean, the COVID test positive was a good thing for him. He needs more time to heal that ankle up because he was even still saying it was swollen and sore, even in the last week or so. It's like, I don't know if Saquon's really is he really going to bounce back anytime soon? Is he going to be ready to play in 2 weeks, 3 weeks? And does he get hurt again?
They have this week and then they have the bye. So
right.
I think that, first off, I guess what the COVID thing is, he tested positive, but since he's vaccinated and he has no symptoms and he tested negative also today. If he tests negative again tomorrow, he is technically eligible to play. So they're not ruling him out yet with that news. But as the guy that owns a lot of Saquon, I hope he doesn't play. Yeah. The leagues I own him in, I'm doing okay in those leagues where I'm still in playoff contention. I've got good talent around him, and I would rather him to sit out the next 2 weeks, come back 3 weeks. That's plenty of time for that ankle to heal, I would assume, from that and
injury.
Will go. But I would still trade for him, hoping that, with this COVID news, that guy that has if the last place team wants any sort of opportunity to turn it around, I would package any 2 players other than Daryl. I would
Henderson. Do CEH and Mitchell. See if the guy will do it.
I would
just on name appeal. CEH and Mitchell for Saquon. See if they take it.
Yeah.
That's what
I
would
honestly do any. I would do any 2 of them other than Henderson for Saquon. In all honesty, I'm not as big on Javonta as you guys. I don't like CEH. Mitchell is. I like Mitchell and I like Patterson.
Just admit it. You're wrong.
I know I like him. I just don't like him as much as you.
Actually, I don't like him as much as Cody. Cody is the fan
I don't like
club.
Javonta that much.
Yeah, I'm the big time supporter.
I like him.
I like Michael Carter more. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think he 100% should not play, and then there's the bye. He should come back after the bye, but what are you going to get? I don't know. I have been saying all off season and all year so far to fade Saquon, but coming up off the bye, hopefully he should be all right as long as he does not try to play this week and they don't allow him to play this week.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, with what you got, I would say, listen. Saquon's hurt. CH is hurt. They're both coming back pretty much at the same time. I'll kick in Eli Mitchell. There you go. That's exactly what I was thinking with what you have. CH, Eli Mitchell for Saquon. If you like them,
they do.
Would I do that? I don't know. I'd have to. There'd be a lot more. I'd have to know.
If I'm last place, and
you like CH more than that, eh?
No, I just don't like Saquon as much as a lot of other people this year. I think next year he'll be much like the, Dalvin Cook, after his injury. It takes a full year, in my opinion, for most people, unless you're Adrian Peterson, it takes a full year to recover from that ACL and then come back and be, what you were. Yeah.
All right. Deegan says, hey guys, do you prefer Gaskin or Boston Scott for RB2 this week? Gut tells me Gaskin.
So who do they play?
Thing is, Boston Scott scored 2 touchdowns last week, right? Didn't even play a snap, I don't think, the fourth quarter. He had 2 touchdowns, 18 carries. How many rushing touchdowns did your Patriots have against the Chargers last week? 3?
The Chargers, 3.
3 or 4, maybe? The Chargers are terrible against running backs.
They didn't have a single passing touchdown, so
yeah, they're terrible against running backs.
Or they had one.
I don't mind Boston Scott one bit, especially at home. But Gaskin at home as well against the Texans, I don't mind that either. I don't think you can particularly go wrong. I would probably start both of them unless you have much better options at flex.
So
I would probably go Boston Scott.
Boston Scott has the touchdown upside, which is sad to say. Gaskin has 1 receiving touchdown on the year, but I think Gaskin's the safer play. I think Boston Scott's kind of the ceiling play potentially.
I think Boston Scott's the ceiling and the safer play. Their usage for Gaskin is so inconsistent. They like to get that Ahmed the ball a lot. I think Boston Scott easily sees more touches than
I
Gaskin.
think you're blinded by that one game maybe a little bit because he only played like 20% of the snaps last week without Malcolm Brown, who's now out.
But
for,
even when
2
Gaskin's
more
on the
weeks.
field, they just don't give him the ball. They just
He carried the ball like 13 times last week. He's at double digit. He's had like 12 and 13 carries the past 2 weeks, and he gets the passing down work. You know, with Malcolm Brown out, I like Gaskin more. It was a tough matchup last week. I can't remember who it was against off the top of my head, but it was a bit of a tough matchup.
You thought, but Tampa Bay was a tough matchup, and that's where he ate the most.
But the passing game, right?
Yeah.
Like, look at what
that's why that's why you'd think you'd almost think the way he plays that he'd almost be matchup proof, because if it's a good matchup, he gets most of the carries, and if it's a bad matchup, he'd be in the passing game. But it's just.
It's true. I agree. I don't like how they use him. I think they should give him the ball because he is the best running back on that team.
Yeah, by far.
I don't think it's close. Yeah, so they should, but will they? They haven't been. So I don't disagree with that. And yeah, Boston Scott getting 18 carries with 2 touchdowns and not even playing for a full quarter, going up against a terrible run defense and gives up a lot of touchdowns to running backs. Like I said, I don't think you can particularly go wrong.
This could be matchup based. So he said the Dolphins played the Texans, and who does and you said the Eagles play
the Chargers. Yeah.
So,
Gainwell, I mean, they basically split the carries. Gainwell had 13 and Scott had 12. I mean,
again, Scott didn't play like a
Gainwell had 13 carries, or was it Jordan Howard that had 13 carries?
Gainwell had 13 against Detroit. Boston Scott had 12, and Jordan Howard had 12.
Not a single snap in the fourth quarter for Boston.
Gainwell carried all those in the fourth quarter then, because I swear, like I was watching a lot of the game and I didn't even see him on the field.
Yeah, Gainwell did not do well.
He didn't get the ball the first half. He didn't even touch the ball.
Yeah, Rick said in the chat, he said Gainwell, no, they didn't split. Gainwell didn't get a touch until the fourth.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought.
It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense because Gainwell was,
everyone thought he was going to be the man. Rick called that on the Sunday morning show too. He's like, Gainwell is Boston Scott's going to be involved, and we thought Gainwell would at least be somewhat involved, but it was just Boston Scott show, and then Jordan Howard got some goal line work as well, and they both had 2 touchdowns. So
and now he's back on the practice squad.
I expected that from Boston Scott as well. I was very much on the Boston Scott train with that injury.
All right, so everybody's saying Boston Scott.
I'm a huge Gainwell supporter, but
I think Gainwell's still probably arguably the most talented running back on that roster, even with Miles Sanders.
I agree.
All right, DFS Little Monster, welcome, my friend. Would you guys trade Zeke for Henderson rest of season PPR? Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a good question. That's a really
I hate that that's a good question, though. It really should be Zeke pretty easily.
But that's razor thin again. That's like what, RB 8 for 9 or something like that?
Zeke's 9, Henderson's 10.
There you go. Pretty good.
Zeke came on. I mean, he had 3 20-plus games.
As I mentioned, Henderson does not play a top 10 defense against the run the rest of the season, pretty much, I believe.
Yeah, he's got the Titans. He's got the Titans this week in week 9, and then the Ravens week 17, which is number 4 against the run. And then he's got 27, 17, 14, 20, 28, 21. I mean, those are some really juicy matchups.
So basically the fantasy championship, he's in kind of a similar situation to Fournette when that's the only time.
Yeah. Where the fantasy playoffs from week 14 on, Zeke has a 10th ranked defense 2 times in the Washington team, the Giants, and the Cardinals. Yeah, but then he also he faces the Saints in week 13. He's got Broncos this week, and then he's got Falcons, Chiefs, Raiders. I think it's Zeke.
What I'm doing there, if I'm you, I think you can get a little more than just Henderson for Zeke, just off name value and recognition. And they're right there as far as, rankings and everything like that. You could sell Zeke, hey, he's done his buy. I still got to deal with Henderson's buy. Like, there's things you could do and say and get a little bit. I think you could get, something else. But I like Henderson too. The reality is I think he's gonna, in a PPR, he should catch more balls. Right? He's more of a passing down back than Zeke. Zeke and Pollard, the reality is, and I love Zeke, the reality is they're relatively interchangeable. They can do a lot of the same things, and Pollard can catch the ball. Can Sony Michel catch the ball like Daryl Henderson? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So he gives you a little more upside there. As far as stack boxes are concerned, they're the same, right? So I'd probably go Henderson, and you could probably squeak out a little more out of the guy, I think.
All right, so there you go. So Tony comes in with, what do you guys think about Mark Ingram rest of the way, Bryce?
I don't know what to think. I think it's an Alvin Kamara show still, and Mark Ingram goes in to give him a break. Mark Ingram will be involved. He knows that offense. He's still a pretty good. He's a good backup running back. He's a guy where if your starter gets hurt, your organization doesn't feel like they need to rush him back. But Alvin Kamara doesn't hardly ever gets hurt. Knock on wood, of course, with how many shares I have of him and what's going on with everybody else. But I'd almost stash him as a handcuff because Brad talked about earlier the difference, and I think Mark Ingram is a true handcuff. Alvin Kamara runs the ball very well. He's the best runner on the team. He's by far the best catching back, if not the best in the league. And Mark Ingram goes in just to give him a spell. So that's pretty much what I think of him. I would grab him if I had Kamara. I wouldn't really.
He got 8 touches this week.
Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah. I mean, that's nothing special.
I think that's everything that we basically said last week when we were talking about him is he's just a handcuff. Yeah. And if you own Kamara, go get him. If you don't, then there's no big deal. Because realistically, when Taysom Hill comes back too, he's going to steal a lot of goal line touches and stuff like that. And there's tons of goal line packages for Taysom Hill as a runner. So if you're thinking,
you mean Trevor Siemian, the starting quarterback, Trevor Siemian?
Yeah, exactly.
Does he stay the starter?
Good.
Does he stay the starter? The way Drew Brees talked about how Sean Payton, and because he was there last year with him, it doesn't seem like he's going to lose that job.
Yeah, I don't know.
Taysom Hill or Trevor Siemian?
No, I think Siemian keeps it.
Yeah,
I grabbed Siemian in a few places just to see what happens, but I don't know, man.
I think he keeps it.
I agree. I think
not going to have Michael Thomas this year, of course, but
I think they know that Taysom Hill just is not. He's a great gadget piece, and he's a great guy to have, and he can do a lot of different things, especially on the goal line, but he's not an NFL quarterback.
No, not at all.
I don't think.
Yeah. All right, so Savvy wants to know Chase Edmonds or Michael Carter rest of the season. We all know my answer. Michael Carter, easy.
Michael Carter for me.
Yeah, I love
Chase Edmonds doesn't get the ball when they're inside the 20.
My only concern there though is how many years has James Conner played in the NFL? How many years has James Conner been injured? It's almost
but his workload is so low that he's been healthy.
Yeah, they've done a good job definitely mixing both of them in. Right now, Edmonds is a top 20 fantasy back. And Michael Carter is
top 15, isn't he?
No. For the season?
They're both top 20 running backs. So right now, Edmonds is around 16, Carter's around 18.
I thought Carter was 14.
Carter had a rough early going. They didn't really get him heavily involved. Week 2 against the Pats, he had a fair amount of work, but he had less than 10 carries each time.
Plays a big role in that, picture as well.
He's kind of progressed. He's kind of just slowly progressing, but I would prefer Michael Carter Jr. for me.
All right. Should I trade Swift to get Chase in PPR? This pains my heart to say it. I think I would go for Chase for sure.
Jamar Chase?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Right. I mean, I love Swift, but he can be shut down with this crap he's at offenses this year.
I'm sticking with Swift just because it's running back. Yeah. Everything this whole show was built around. Running back depth is key. And he catches, as far as just catches, he probably catches close to the same amount of, catches that Jamar Chase has. Obviously there's way more upside as far as touchdowns and whatever for Jamar Chase.
The tough thing for Swift though is of the rest of the fantasy season, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the teams he faces are all top 15 against the pass. And watching him against top 15 teams against the pass, he does not produce very well. I mean, even this week against the Eagles, who are top 10 against the pass, 5 catches, 24 yards. I mean, in most leagues, he probably didn't break double-digit fantasy points.
Did you watch that game, Brad?
Yeah, exactly. And this is
I watched that game. I watch all the Lions games because I hate.
I'm gonna agree with Cody. I think that you can get more. The running backs are so much more value. In a vacuum, say nobody's injured. Obviously, I'd make this trade, in my opinion. But with how things are going, all these running backs that have gotten hurt, you can make someone overpay. This guy that has Chase is probably had Henry or somebody get hurt, and he's going to be forced to overpay. If I'm getting rid of a running back, unless I have 4 of them, if I'm getting rid of a running back, I'm going to make sure I get a startable one in return and an overpay at wide receiver. I just think you can get more with everything that's going on.
Yeah, I'm not trading away a quality RB1 100% of every league. He's an RB1. Well, maybe not a standard scoring, but in pretty much any league, Swift is an RB1. And is Chase even at that level at the wide receiver spot? It's pretty close, but I go Swift.
Oh, it looks like a follow-up to Zeke for – oh, no, it's not really. They're two different, really. Also been offered Devonta Smith for Clay. I'm assuming it's Claypool. Should I pull the trigger or hold on to Chase? So Devonta Smith, wide receiver Eagles, or Chase Claypool. Other wide receivers are Kadarius, Khalif Raymond. Not a lot to love, to be honest. So which one do you feel more comfortable with, Claypool or Smith?
Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, Chase Claypool. And by the way, Tony is a lot to love. You just wait.
Yeah. He's just got to stay healthy. Sorry about that. Mike.
No, Chase Claypool for sure, in my opinion. On that one.
Gosh.
Yes.
All right, Facebook user.
Yes.
If Sully's in here, he would lambaste you for not selling Henry already. But I would tell you yes, if you can get out on Henry. But at this point,
no value.
I think you have to wait though, because he's now hurt. So people are going to lowball you all day.
What if someone offered you a first this year and a first next year? Would you take it?
Yep.
That's not exactly a low ball, right? Like
that's not as low ball as I've.
What if they offer you a first and a second next year?
I'd probably wait.
I would wait till like before, like at least the off season, right? Like before.
I'd wait till people forget that he was hurt. At least,
like Sully was talking about last night.
He might come back this year.
In the
real
playoffs, maybe.
That'd be great for fantasy.
I've heard some really bad things about that. Is it a Lisfranc or a Jones fracture? Is it the same thing?
I have 0 shares of Derrick Henry, so I honestly haven't paid much attention.
The way that people have talked about it, it sounds as though it's something will take some time to heal. Not a big
what I know of Lisfranc injuries, people say like a broken bone is easier to come back from than a Lisfranc.
They take some work for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how different a Lisfranc and a Jones fracture are. I don't know what that means. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but
I have no clue as well.
All right, follow-up question. With Rodgers being out, Burrow or Herbert? For me, I'm going Burrow, but that's probably because
Burrow does play the Browns, I believe, right?
Yeah, he's got a nice matchup.
The Browns' secondary is not bad, is it?
It's not bad, but
I mean,
Burrow's been
going into the season. You think that defense is stacked? At least I did, but it just has not been very good.
Burrow is facing, the Browns are top 10 in both categories, and Herbert has the Eagles, who are top 10 against the pass, but weak against the run. So, I mean, he probably, I would still go Burrow.
I would probably, I would probably go Herbert just because it is a divisional game, and the games like that are played just a little bit differently. Like how many divisional games you see are just absolute shootouts?
Look at against the Steelers last week, right? It was I guess
Herbert's facing Philadelphia.
He's talking about Burrow. He's talking about Burrow's playing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he said Herbert. I was like,
no, he's saying Herbert because Burrow's playing You're right though. They do play each other harder. Like those teams,
especially Battle of Ohio, right? Like it's a I don't expect although I think Burrow's had 3 touchdowns in the past 4 games straight or something like that. So that's pretty quality.
Herbert had a bad. I think the Chargers bounced back this week. I mean, I hoped New England would, kind of shut down that pass game, and they did. But the Chargers, it seems like they always answer the next week. When they get kind of beat up. So I'm gonna go with Herbert as well. I think their weapons are very similar and to an extent. So I'm just gonna lean Herbert just because, like he said, it's a divisional matchup, and the Chargers both secondaries are good, but I just think the Browns might be able to get to him a little bit more than I think the Eagles will too.
All right, there you go. All right, so Next question: Damian Harris and Javonta Booker for the flex. Who are you playing? Well, I think
this can definitely be matchup based.
And if you want to see our tiers on who to play, that tiers running back video will be dropping near the end of the week. So make sure to check back.
I'm going Booker.
Shameless plug.
For sure.
Too.
For sure. Carolina's defense is legit, and they're at home.
And the Raiders
the
can be
Giants
run
at
on.
home, and that Booker looked great against the Chiefs. He looked really good. So
he's been serviceable. Obviously, keep an eye on Barkley. If for some reason he's playing,
I don't think he does.
It's obviously
in the COVID
Harris,
business.
But we're thinking he's not.
All right, Slim. She's going at you. Cody, you're making me nervous about Elijah Mitchell. Should I trade him? Somebody who needs an RB offered me Claypool and Jared Cook, who I don't need.
That's nowhere near enough. No.
Yeah.
No.
Nowhere near enough.
I would do a trade that involves Claypool for Mitchell for sure, but I would look for something else with it, depending on what your RBs look like, Slim.
You need to get two starters. Two starters for Mitchell.
Yeah, I would trade Mitchell for sure. I would trade Mitchell, and I would take Claypool back, but you need a lot more in Jared Cook
I would want more
to make that deal, in my opinion. You
need
to
redraft on the waiver wire in some of my leagues.
Yeah, if you can get a cheap running back, some of the names we named, actually, I think even better than those guys. I don't know. I'd have to see a little more, but no, not that exact offer. No way, not nearly enough.
And you may post that other person's roster, Slim, in Discord. I know that we've been in there chit-chatting. Post the other person's roster in there and tag us so that we can take a look at the roster and say, hey, this would be what we would want to offer. We can certainly do that to help too. Mark wants to know, should I trade Corey Davis for Alex Collins, full PPR? I have pretty good wide receiver depth, bleeding at running back. I have Chris Carson, Saquon, Booker. I'm okay with that. I mean, Carson's not coming back right now. Collins has done fine in his absence, and somewhere Sully smiled. So
I agree. At least you have one starter when it comes to the Giants backfield. I think Collins will get Penny really didn't do much when he did come back. I think Collins will continue his.
Yeah. Penny's been terrible. It's like 1 yard a carry. I mean, just bad right now.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, then you have both Seattle running backs as well. So.
Right. Okay. Well, he offered me D. Henderson. So this is a follow up to earlier. He offered me Henderson and Javonta for Zeke and Claypool.
No.
I would hold what you got.
I do not like.
You're trading away Zeke and Claypool. Yeah. The same guy. Yeah. No.
Trade Jerry Jeudy for Brandon Cooks for wide as his wide receiver 2 in a PPR.
That's razor thin too. It's another
That's a tough one.
Jerry Jeudy was actually fairly active his first week. He get like 8 points.
I love Jerry Jeudy.
I do too. I thought that was a terrible landing spot for Jerry Jeudy. I was very upset that he ended up in Denver personally, and I think it's just a terrible, terrible spot for him to be. He could be, a top 20 for sure fantasy wide receiver in my opinion on a lot of other teams. But
I would.
That's
besides the point here. But
Tyrod Taylor comes back this week, right?
And Cooks. I'm about to say Cooks is fine with whatever quarterback is there because he gets targeted a bunch.
But he had his best. I know Tyrod was out after 2 weeks, but the 2 weeks he did play, he targeted him. Oh, was it only 1 week he played?
1 week, yeah. I'd probably stick with Cooks just because he's getting targeted, he's getting volume. There's more there's Brad and I are always arguing between Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton, and those are the other two wide receivers.
Nobody's arguing with me about it's Cortland Sutton all day.
Who are the other wide receivers in Houston?
Cortland Sutton's cold right now. He's on my cold players in this week's article.
You're cold.
We're I think
you're cold. You're so cold.
2 weeks below 10 points.
I think week to week, Brad. I'm up on the Tim Patrick over Sutton since this whole conversation started. I think I'm up.
Get out of here. All right. So Bill must have jumped off because we answered Bill's question already, but I want to make sure I just turn back and we'll hit it real quick. This question, Bill, we said do not touch either of these guys. Chris Carson with the neck injury. We don't know if he's going to come back this year. Ridley, we don't know if he's going to come back this year. We would look elsewhere like a Ty Johnson or some other running back if he's on your waiver wire. I would also encourage you to look back through the comments and jump into Discord and post who's available on your waiver wire, and we can try to help you pick up somebody. Yeah. These two guys, as good as they are, just you can't trust them the rest of this season if you're in a redraft format.
If you have IR spots, I would throw Ridley on it.
Yeah, if you have IR, you can throw Ridley on. You can throw them both on your IR.
Over Carson, right? I would throw Ridley over Carson.
go rewatch the episode. We gave you some good insight.
There's lots of options. We can definitely help you out, Bill. So hopefully that helps out. We've talked a lot of running backs. We've answered a lot of other random questions as well. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, hit the like button. Thank you guys as always for hanging out with us. Don't forget, check out our handsome friend Bryce with our handsome friend Rick and Sully. And I think Matt has even been on there on Sunday mornings. The Boomer Bust Show, they will help you get your lineups, your last minute questions. They'll take care of you Sunday mornings to get you ready for the all the action. For those that will join them, you're smarter to do so. And enjoy your Thursday night football, Colts and Jets. That should be a bit of a banger. Should be a fun fantasy matchup. And we'll talk to you guys next week.